Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? And welcome to the Tatiana Show. It is the middle of August here in New Jersey, and it has been nonstop hot every single day, like really, really hot, 100 degrees. It's August 16th, so I guess that's to be expected in this area. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Josh from Volturo. Josh, how's it going?
Good. It's fantastic here. I'm actually very jealous of your weather situation. Not that it's good to talk about weather on the radio because I'm sure everybody's got different scenarios. I know my friends in Australia are freezing cold, but it deserves them right because all I get on Facebook is weather updates in the winter of beautiful hot bikini weather, and I like to wear my bikini.
Well, when we were in Vegas, you chose a very colorful bathing suit. So, just saying.
Yep.
Anyway, it is Vegas.
Vegas was fantastic, wasn't it? I still have wonderful memories of Freedom Fest. It was really, really, met some fascinating people there. Everything from...
Josh, make sure you're talking into the mic. I can't hear you.
Yeah,
new microphone over there. You've got to learn how to work it. I left you a little note in there.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We just can't hear you at all, so, it's fine.
So what's going on in the Bitcoin world? We've had Bitfinex being hacked. Oh, we've had so many things going down. It's been nuts. And Steam, everyone's going on about Steam it. You're obsessed by it?
I'm not obsessed. I'm obsessed with trying to figure out what I think of it. Because I know a lot of smart people that think it's cool, and then I know a lot of smart people that think it's totally sketchy. I know Ned, the CEO, and he doesn't seem sketchy to me. He seems like a good guy. And several people whose opinions I trust and who wouldn't just, shill for anybody because it's convenient or whatever. They all really like it, but then other people who I also respect have some questions. So I'm very curious. I'm going to be posting a song on there later on today, which I recorded last week, and that's how long it took me to edit the video. But yeah, I'm going to post it up there, so we'll see. And I don't know, I've been posting on there. I made some money. I pulled out $350 in Bitcoin, and that was good. So,
wow.
I know. We'll
really
see.
Good. Geez, that's almost a whole Bitcoin. Wow. Half a Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely. So our first guest today, we have Ladies of Liberty special. It's always special when Ladies of Liberty join together, but I'm excited for our guests. Our first guest is Carla Gericke, which is definitely not the way that you pronounce it. Earlier I had it correct. I was challenged that I wouldn't be able to say her South African pronunciation, but we'll go with Carla Gericke, who I've known for quite a while. And she used to be the queen of the Free State Project, which I suppose she always is, sort of like presidents are always presidents. But anyway, now she's in charge of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, which she's the president of. And she's also doing Carla for New Hampshire Senate. I don't even understand what the difference is between a state senator and I don't know, is there a difference between a state senator and like another kind, or is it all the same thing?
Well, it's at state level, it's a state senator, so you work within your state house, so you work with your constituents within the state. So obviously, being with the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, I think a senator on a state level is a really important thing. There are federal senators, like they're federal presidents, like the mess we have currently with Trump and Clinton. But I think for most people here in New Hampshire, certainly people who've moved here with the Free State Project, we don't really care anymore about things on a federal level. We don't think it's fixable. We don't think it's something that can honestly be changed. It's too big. It's the federal government is immoral. It's unsustainable, it's ungovernable, and I believe it's unfixable. And so I'm really excited to be involved as a next step with the Foundation for Independence, and then also launching my political career, which will be interesting.
So for people who are not familiar with you, maybe you could give a little bit of background and also how you came to be, I don't know if you consider yourself anarchist or libertarian, or maybe you don't have a label, but you've kind of come here from faraway place. Tell us a little bit of the backstory.
Sure. So I was born in South Africa in the 70s, so was sort of raised in the apartheid era. I was in law school when Nelson Mandela was set free and when we had our first free and fair elections in 1994. That was also the year I won a green card in the green card lottery and decided to move to America because it was an opportunity to come pursue the American dream. I got here, I worked in Silicon Valley as an attorney for almost a decade, went through the bubble and then through the burst. And once I experienced the burst, I started really looking at why that had happened, discovered Austrian economics, then also discovered the Free State Project, which is a movement to concentrate 20,000 libertarians, liberty lovers, or whatever name we want to give them, in the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire was chosen because it is, and actually there was a report that came out yesterday, it is the freest state in the Union, and so we see it sort of as ground zero for pursuing more liberty in our lifetime.
Excellent. So then what happened?
So then after the bubble burst,
no, I mean, like with New Hampshire, you guys hit the 20,000.
Yes. So earlier this year, we hit the 20,000 mark. And the way the project was set up is that 20,000 people needed to pledge to say that they would move to New Hampshire if 20,000 other insane liberty lovers would do the same thing. So, it took almost a decade to get that pledge fulfilled, but we did it at the start of this year. We announced it right before we had Edward Snowden at our annual winter event, Liberty Forum, and then we threw a giant party at PorcFest in June. So 20,000 people have pledged. About 10% have already moved, although they weren't required to do so. And even with that fairly small percentage, so about 10% of the people who will end up coming, we've seen a lot of successes within the state of New Hampshire. One of the things that's really exciting that happened recently was on a state level, they've stopped asset forfeiture, which of course is kind of when the state goes, yeah, we're just going to take your stuff. We're not going to charge you with a crime. We're just going to take your money or take your car or your boat or whatever it is. And
seems reasonable.
Yeah.
They're the government. I mean, don't they deserve it?
And of course, so one of the interesting things on a state level versus a federal level is with asset forfeiture, they actually get away from, we stopped it on a state level, but on a federal level, they have this program called equitable sharing. So they take it anyway, and then it's like a kickback. So the feds take it, and then they kick the money back to the state. So certainly, if I become senator, if we're going to project positively, then that's definitely something I want to look at. I think there are several things that need to happen over the long term, but hopefully we'll be able to educate people about how a free and independent, self-determined state like New Hampshire can really act as a beacon of liberty for other people to see these ideas work. I kind of liken it to building the Yankee Hong Kong or a Yankee Switzerland.
So how are people reacting to the message? Obviously, you may, maybe I shouldn't presume this, but I'm assuming you're the underdog candidate. Does that, do you have opportunities to kind of spread the message to different people in the community? How have they been reacting? I mean, the civil forfeiture thing should alone be enough to make people throw their support behind you. How has that been accepted by the community?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is obviously my first Senate run. It's my first run for anything in politics. I'm as surprised as most of my supporters that I even agreed to do it. Ultimately, the reason I decided to do it was my incumbent, who's a 9-term incumbent, he is 77 years old. He has a war chest of almost $1 million. So I'm also accepting donations. But he was running uncontested, and I had just bought a house in this neighborhood on the west side of Manchester, which is the largest city in New Hampshire, and there was a shooting where 2 officers were injured, non-life-threatening injuries, and they locked down our neighborhood for more than 5 hours after the suspect had been apprehended. And I'm talking about like several city blocks. I mean, it affected 10 to 20,000 people. People couldn't go to work. They closed 3 schools. There were helicopters in the air. Streets were closed. People were ordered back into their homes by gunpoint. And, that was such a shocking experience for me here, because this is really the live free or die state, and this is not the kind of place one would expect that to happen. And so when I heard this guy was running uncontested, I was like, you know what? I can do this. At least I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. It's true what the wise economists say about property rights, because I think it's having, bought the house and living here, I realized, wow, this is literally my backyard, and this cannot happen here.
Wow, that's really interesting. So so what ticket are you running on?
I am running as a Republican, and to be fair, as the lady at the bank said when I went to open my bank account, she's like, you don't really read Republican. I don't, but I had registered as a delegate, to just try and help with the platform within the state. And so when the opportunity came up, and my opponent obviously is a Democrat, so we're one of the few races where it's not there's no primary. So we have the primary in September, and a lot of Liberty lovers who've moved here have primaries, and they're doing, they have races, and they're all involved. So mine's really only starting to ramp up now. My sign should go out in the next week, and then the door-to-door and the sign waving. But I'm also hoping to do more with social media. I think that there are a lot of tactics that people use for politics that are archaic, and I don't know about you guys, but I've never driven past a sign wave other than Ron Paul maybe and been like, yes, that has convinced me to vote for this person with this name. So I put up a website, I'm blogging, I'm being very open about the issues. I believe police militarization in America is a very serious problem. And, I'm for decriminalization or legalization of marijuana, the equitable sharing that I talked about. And so, if people want to learn more, they can certainly go to carla4nhsenate.com, and then, also maybe learn a little bit more about how New Hampshire is a federal payer is a net payer to the federal government. So we actually give the federal government more money than we get back. So for every dollar that goes to the feds, we only get 70 cents on the dollar back, and that money comes with strings. So I think as more and more people learn, well, 2 things. I think as the police state becomes more the boot on everyone's neck, and more people realize that part of it. But then also looking at the economic side, if people realize, wow, economically it really doesn't even make sense for certain states to be part of the union, and why shouldn't we be able to become independent? The Mises Institute did a study at the start of this year that found that New Hampshire, if it was a standalone country, would be the wealthiest state in the developed world, beating Norway, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. So it's like, why can't we be a kick-ass little country like Switzerland? And, we'll still trade with our neighbors, and we'll have open borders. Maybe people would have 2 passports to start. You'd have a dual citizenship as America has with lots of other countries, and then just take it from there. But the federal government is heading towards a collapse, and I don't see why the people who see that should be punished for their bad ideas.
That's really, really interesting. Do people? Okay, so what if you guys tried to get independence? I mean, don't you think that the government would send in a bunch of troops, malign everybody, and shoot a bunch of people and say, no, we want your tax blood money? Or do you think that it would be? Do you think it's possible in a peaceful way?
I think that Brexit gave us a huge opportunity. I think that sort of showed that there is a way to peacefully change the future. I definitely think if independence was to fly in New Hampshire, it would have to be by referendum. It would probably have to be something like a 2/3 majority so that the people really are on board. You don't want to come in with an idea and then kind of go, we're going to force you to accept this new idea. And, it's something that may sound scary to people initially. So I always jokingly say it would be great if Vermont seceded first so that we could see what the federal government's response is. But ultimately, it's like being in a bad marriage, and making the argument that you can't get a divorce. I mean, no one asked permission in 1775 to secede from, the British Crown. And I think we're going to have to do it a little differently. I would hope the response would not be violence because, obviously our platform is about peace and education. And it'll be interesting to see. I will say this, the Union Leader, which is our largest newspaper here in the States, did a poll right after Brexit. And they asked, how would you vote if New Hampshire had a referendum on seceding from the United States? And it got almost 2,000 respondents, and 43% said, I'd vote for a free New Hampshire. And that's without our organization really even starting to do seminars or town halls or having a conference or anything like that. So I do think here is a real opportunity for people as they get more educated about the benefits of, separating from that abusive spouse to really get momentum and to get people to say, you know what, this is a great idea, why don't we do it? And assuming that, if it is by referendum, then, I think the federal government would be hard pressed to actually respond to that with violence, especially in light of what happened with Brexit, and especially in light of the fact that more and more decentralization is happening worldwide. 100 years ago, there were 40 or 50 sovereign nations, and now there are almost 200. So, the trend definitely is towards having smaller, independent states where people have some kind of cultural connection. Now, sometimes that's something like language, but it can be something as simple as, hey, we're going to be the little country that just says everyone gets to live and let live. Let's have free markets and let's all prosper.
Do you think that 43% has something to do with the Free State Project bringing in all these sort of like-minded people?
I do think so. I mean, and I think because the Free Staters tend to be techies as well, so I think we dominate on social media in a way that the dinosaurs just do not grasp at this stage. So if a poll goes out, we have social media platforms that have hundreds of thousands of followers. So certainly, I think that number was higher because we got to share it and to tell people, if you live in this state and you're interested in this topic, go vote. But I also think it's cool that the Union Leader, which is a very conservative newspaper, actually even ran the question. Now, there are only about 2,000 Free Staters in state, and there are probably another 2,800 locals who identify as friends of the Free State Project. So let's say that number is about 5,000. We're seeing the uptick in the move as more and more people move because we, triggered the pledge of the 20,000. So I really think the future is where we're going to be able to say definitively, yes, Free Staters influence things in this way. But we also have to be realistic. Even if 20,000 people come, 20,000 out of 1.2 million is still a very small number. So what it's really going to be about is the people on the ground, the people who live here, whether you're a 10th generation Granite Stater or you're someone who moved recently, it's going to be about educating those people and making sure they're on board with it as well.
I have a question for you. So I've seen some questionable tactics by Free Staters, and apparently there are, we're in the libertarian movement, there's some weirdos there. So do you think, how has the community accepted it? Is it something that everybody's misbehaved. Well, a certain key, little people are kind of starting that trouble. Has that had a negative influence in the community, or would you say that overall the community has been responsive and has been open-minded? Because if people are going to act like jerks, nobody's going to want to be friends with us. So how does that work? How have you seen that play out on the ground?
I definitely think there have been missteps in the past. Different people have different goals or even different jobs. If your job is to be a shock jock, obviously the way you're going to approach a story is going to be different to someone who's maybe trying the diplomatic power of persuasion, let's say. So I would say for the most part, most people don't even know about the Free State Project, even in the state of New Hampshire. I mean, I read a number that said there are only about 6,000 to 8,000 people who are even politically active, like really into politics. I'm not talking about people who go and vote. So that's a fairly small number. Now, they probably all know about us, and to be frank, the progressives certainly, are not super positive about some of the Free State Project antics. But I also think as a movement, it's matured, and there are more voices, and there are different people who sort of sell the ideas of liberty in different ways. And, there's this beautiful synergy with tech that really has only happened over the past even 5 years. I mean, if you think we're doing a live TV show that looks professional, that we, kind of set up in my home library. So more voices, more people to tell people about it. I would say that the average person who does learn about the Free State Project in New Hampshire actually has a very positive reaction, where they're like, wow, really? That's cool. That's great that these people are moving here. One thing I discovered, initially I thought when I moved in 2008 that it was kind of lip service, that this was a libertarian state, but then you meet just local people and they're all pretty skeptical about politics in general. They really do subscribe to a sort of philosophy of live and let live free or die, just do your own stuff, don't mess with other people's property. And so that sentiment is really truly here on the ground. So I think as more people come in, and as more people, I guess, for those who are interested in politics, get elected, but then, there's also social stuff. There's Amanda Bolden, who is a first-year state rep, started a private charity that feeds thousands of people over Thanksgiving, and I could see organizations like that where we're really trying to circumvent the state by saying, here are alternatives to coercion. Yes, you know what? Some people do need charity, but we don't have to steal from everyone to solve that problem. Can we do it on a private scale? Can we do it privately?
No, I agree that that's a really important point. That, and often I get that people say, well, you don't want the homeless to get fed, or you don't want schools, you don't want church, hospitals. And it's like, no, of course we need all these things. We're in a modern society. We need the homeless to be fed and not suffer. But the important thing is, how do we do that without coercion? Is there another way without having the gun pointed at us? And I think insurance companies really show first of all, a good way of saying, I need some help when I don't expect it, so I'm going to start paying towards that voluntarily. And what do you think towards heading towards that way, in terms of how would things like publicly funded things like schools or roads happen in a more of a in the Free State Project, or the No State Project? I've heard it pronounced as well.
These are questions everyone's still grappling with. I mean, one of the things I really enjoy about being here in New Hampshire is it is sort of the petri dish. It's kind of the experiment, right, for all of these ideas. So I'm not sure we have all the answers yet, but I would say this, if people didn't have to pay federal personal income tax, everyone's at least, 20 to 40% richer immediately. I know if I had more money in my pocket, I would certainly spend it more on charity or things I'm passionate about that I think would enrich the lives of people around me. So that's one way. I think that tech is going to help a lot. I mean, we saw it with sort of Uber and Airbnb. And of course, the big nasty state has to come in and stick their nose in everyone's business. I mean, Airbnb had done really well here in New Hampshire, and then we have a 9%, there's no sales tax or income tax here, but there is a room and board tax. And the legislature figured out, oh my God, we're losing all this revenue, of course, because the big hotels and those people who, the cronies, wanted to punish Airbnb hosts. And so, I just rented a log cabin. I need to get away. And, she sent me a little private message and said, oh, by the way, there, you have to now leave the 9% tax. And she was like, just leave it in cash on the table. And I couldn't figure out if that was a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or she was like, you need to leave the money. So I guess I'll find out in a couple of weeks. But there are many things that I think will just change. I look at the world as government, ? There's an app for that. In the same way that we saw, disruptive technologies are going to go in. I mean, there's no reason why, having your plow guy in the winter here couldn't work in the same way that Uber does, right? Where you're like, okay, I've got 4 feet of snow, someone needs to come and clean it out. Or that when your garbage can is full, someone could come and do it. So I think that we're not sure yet how it's all going to play out, but I think it's going to be exciting, and ultimately everyone is going to get wealthier because we know that free markets result in that. And so I think it's also behooving to us as sort of educators and people who talk about these ideas to think about framing when we talk about them. I often hear people say, oh, we should abolish the Department of Education. And I agree with that. But I think when you say that out loud, if you're a school teacher, that terrifies you. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. How am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to? So the issue becomes, how do we frame it in a way that sounds palatable? So it's like, you know what? Your job could suck 80% less if you were a private tutor, or if you could teach online classes, if you didn't have to worry about this red tape. So I think there's also a responsibility on us when we talk about how we want to scale back the government to explain to the people who are most likely going to be the most negatively affected, to start to think about how do we sell it to them as actually something where in the end they go, yeah, I want that. That sounds way better than the job I have right now.
Yeah, sorry, Tatiana.
Well, I was just going to comment about the teachers, which something that really surprised me. I have a friend of mine here in New Jersey, and she was saying that, I asked her, I'm like, Sue, what's going on with the teachers union, and isn't that good for you? And she says that no, they don't. The perception in society is that the teachers union and all these teachers are just living like, well, the teachers union probably is living off the land, but the actual teachers don't even feel like they're getting anything for the value that they're putting in, right? They have to participate in this. They can't get out of it, and she doesn't feel like the teachers union does anything to help. So it's not just wonderful for the teachers to be involved in those kinds of systems. And it really surprised me, some of the statistics and, how much effort she puts into her job. I mean, she's obviously an excellent teacher because she cares, but she's doing 12-hour days. I'm like, how are you dealing with all these children for 12 hours? But she is. And I guess teachers do have a much harder job than people think. But I think that lobby is really the problem, where people kind of miscategorize teachers based on the actions of the unions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And certainly here in New Hampshire, anyone who's pro-liberty is working really hard on right-to-work legislation. It came fairly close last time. That's certainly something as a senator I would work on as well. It's just to allow people to opt out of the union. When I was still in New York City, I taught up at City College, and I was forced to join the union, and Jews were taken out of my pitiful salary to be part of this union. And I said, well, no, I opt out. And they were like, you can't. And I was like, how does that work? And I think teachers sort of get a short shrift a little bit on issues, but there's a lot of fat there. Here in New Hampshire, the budget is tied to it increases 108, so 8% year over year, but enrollment is dropping and the population is aging. And then you find out, oh wow, the school superintendent in Manchester makes $180,000. Our police chief in the city, which it's a city of 120,000 people, makes over $200,000. And so I think people need to know that. I think once we destroy the narrative that's been painted through their use of propaganda channels, right? They've always controlled the information channels, and that's changed for the reasons we discussed. And as that changes, more and more people will come to realize what we already know. So I love you guys for doing this show and for just getting the word out there.
Well, it's always really fun. Josh, did you have any other questions? Because I wanted to ask Carla one last thing, and then we're going to bring up our next guest with a little bit of announcement action.
No, I was just going to comment on the fact that when you start to dissolve some of these functions of government, you really need, there's a lot of footwork behind the scenes that needs to happen beforehand in terms of, and it goes back to the teachers, where the teachers need to start, or the schooling system needs to really promote the entrepreneurial spirit, because the entrepreneurial spirit sees problems and thinks, yeah, there's a need for that. I'll figure out how to make a little app or a business around that problem and fix the problem where people will want to pay for it. And so getting teachers involved earlier on is a really important part of this whole story.
I agree.
Okay, so one final question. How are you polling so far?
I don't think there have been any polls on our race. I'm going to say I'm polling
100%.
100%
of me and Josh. I think it's really, really awesome. I'm really excited that you were able to come on the show. We have to unfortunately go over to our next guest, but give the people some information on how they can support you, and I really encourage everybody to do so. Carla's been an amazing fixture in the Liberty movement and is a great leader, and I believe that she would do a really good job as a senator. Sounds like she's already way better off than the other guy. Carla, where can people catch up with you?
So you can go to my Senate page, which is carla4newhampshiresenate.com, and there's a donate button up there if you want to support me that way. I'm going to have my Bitcoin donation stuff up in the next week, so we'll be accepting Bitcoin donations as well. And tell your friends, go to my Facebook page, which is also Carla for NH Senate on Facebook. Like it. When you like something I post, please share it. Also, of course, go to the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. Also on Facebook, we share a lot of information there. We like to keep the dialogue going. And let's see, hopefully, maybe in the next 10 years, we'll be NH Exit. We Nexit next.
I like that. Excellent. Thanks very much, Carla. I hope to see you soon. Are you coming down for Liberty Fest in New York this year?
I probably will, yes.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll be bringing up Christina Tobin in just a minute. Before we do, I wanted to just make a few announcements and let people know what we're up to, and I wanted to thank one of our sponsors, Kirk from thebitcoincpa.com.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
Taxes and Bitcoin are literally the worst thing on earth. And as much as I love Bitcoin, I do not love trying to figure out my taxes at the end of the year. He's been going through mine for 4,000 years now, and he's just like, what are you doing here, woman? So what I would recommend people to do is go check out his site. He has some videos that are, for free that are sort of Bitcoin accounting 101, and then he has some more that are paid for, but he also has some services. So I would encourage people to go and check that out for sure. I would also suggest that people support freeross.org. Of course, I'm a big fan of the Ulbricht family, and I'm helping them, raise awareness for Ross's case. He has the appeal going on right now, which is a pretty big deal, and we're going to do a Rossathon, which will be, I don't know, October 1st or 2nd. That's the 3-year anniversary of him being arrested. So for those of you that
it's
don't
already
know,
been 3 years.
can you believe that? Yeah, I think that's about right. So it's obviously a situation that a lot of people really care about, and I have to say it's been amazing seeing how many people are coming together to support this cause, and I think that it's really, that match that's going to light this fire of people just not accepting the prison industrial complex and the drug war for that much longer. I hope that there can be some solutions. Our next guest that we're bringing up is Christina Tobin. Christina is one of those people who's trying to work on the solutions. She's been the head of Free and Equal for a very long time, as long as I've known her. I actually did a gig in Los Angeles with her. I think it was in 2012. There was a really big, cool concert. It was a lot of fun. And this year they're doing the debates again in October in Colorado. So, Christina, welcome to the show, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, Tatiana. Thank you so much for having me. And we did see you. It was 2014, but it could have been 2012. We did the United We Stand Fest, and that was truly the birth of the movement in many ways. I run the Free and Equal Elections Foundation going on almost 10 years. Crazy to think of that. And we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to broaden electoral choices through education and direct positive action. So my background is really extensive in ballot access, having helped get over 1 million signatures to get candidates on the ballot across the political spectrum. That derived from seeing my father wrongfully knocked off the ballot in '98 as governor, and I saw the restrictive ballot access barriers of what the two-party system has created, amongst many other rigged components of the electoral system to keep accountable candidates like my dad off the ballot. So while I am currently helping get the National Libertarian and Green Party on the ballot, my heart with the Free and Equal Elections Foundation is not only putting on presidential debates like we did in 2012, moderated by Larry King and myself, but I realized that we needed to broaden the movement beyond that into the cultural arts United We Stand Fest and symposiums, which I'd be happy to speak about in greater detail throughout the interview. But thank you so much for all the independent media out there like yourself, Tatiana and Josh, because you're such a vital role in helping us to get our message out there. A lot of these accountable organizations and platforms out there throughout the U.S. So I'm grateful for your time today in doing this.
Well, we're really happy to be helping out, and I think it's very invigorating to be a part of this. So, one of the questions that some of the people here are anarchists. I'm sort of borderline. I'm trying to be practical, but in my heart, I want freedom complete. That being said, I participated in the 2012 Ron Paul elections, and since then I've really moved into Bitcoin because I felt that the elections were very difficult in terms of using them as a way to bring about actual change. Frankly, they're rigged, which we're seeing this year. We're seeing that in 2012. There's been countless videos made showing how you can hack into a Diebold machine in under 7 minutes. So how do you maintain enthusiasm for these elections, and do you consider, for example, presidential elections to be legitimate? How do you reconcile with some of those corruption problems?
Well, I think Carla is on the right track. It was inspirational listening to her as a fellow Lady of Liberty out there, and the local elections are super key. I really bow down to her for taking a stand and running for Senate. I feel the mainstream media leads us to believe that the presidential races are the most important when in fact they're not. It's the local elections. It's getting involved in our local community, shifting the power from the federal to the local. The congressional races are key as well. So while I recognize that we have two choices for this election, I do, though I do not believe in all the viewpoints of Trump nor Sanders, I do really support the fact that they're both outside of the two-party system. And they've helped create this awareness beyond the Ron Paul, Ralph Nader, Ross Perot, Anderson faction. All these accountable individuals with very different personality types, really have paved the way for an independent candidates movement. And I do foresee parties becoming a thing of the past. I do think, I think to myself when people say, how can we fix this rigged system? I go back to, remember when we thought, there's no way gay marriage could be legal, right? Remember that? Concealed carry, legalization of marijuana. I mean, this is all, in our mind, we had this roadblock, and that's how I feel we're at with the electoral arena. We have to and will fix those issues, but the way to do that is through conversation and education, and that's what Free and Equal Elections is at the forefront of creating through all of our initiatives.
So do you have a horse in the race? Do you ever reveal who you're going to vote for?
I will not at this point in time be voting. I don't support, for me, there's no candidate for president that I 100% agree with, but I agree for more voices and more choices, and I think that the year 2020 and 24 historically are going to be the biggest years ever when it comes to presidential races, and I foresee one, if not many, independents running for president. And aside from the foundation, I have a petitioning company many don't know of yet for almost 20 years, so I would potentially be the one that would be hired to get that independent or multiple independent candidates on the ballot, because that's the #1 reason Dr. Ron Paul said he did not run as an independent for president, is because of the restrictive ballot access barriers, and I'm here to help the candidates that I feel will rise get on the ballot in the future.
Yeah, I really saw the corruption. Well, some wouldn't even call it corruption, they'd just call it systemic problem of the entire election process during the Ron Paul, the initial run of Ron Paul in 2000, when was it? With the blimp and all that. And I really saw how intensely corrupt it was. I mean, this guy had so many followers. The grassroots movement was absolutely enormous. No coverage in the media. And now WikiLeaks has come out with the latest from that the leaks that the DNC was giving direct orders to CNBC about that they're giving too much support to, who was it, Sanders, and to stop it. So it wasn't even a discussion; it was a direct order. And this sort of thing makes me really appreciate what we're doing as well as these independent media. And to be honest, I think the youth are looking at more and more stuff like us instead of going to the television, which is totally controlled, opaquely controlled, transparently controlled, I must say.
You know, another thing that I just saw the other day was also how it's not just the media, it's also Google. I mean, Google, they did an experiment with searches of, Clinton, CRI, and then they would come up with some other word that had nothing to do with it, and then they were searching it in Bing, and the first search words would be criminal, indictment, blah, blah, blah. And Google was totally skewed. So, I don't know, sometimes I worry about our dependence on technology, because that, too, up until now has been able to be manipulated, but what's also good about finding out about these things is it gives an incentive for innovators to create technological solutions around that bias that is buyable, right? So I think that, the independent media is important, but I do find it a little bit frustrating the way that different social media algorithms don't necessarily jive. They're not really.
It was interesting that we actually tested that. A whole heap of friends, we saw that post, and so I tested it in Germany, and I was getting criminal CRI crimes, Clinton crimes, and people in America weren't. So it was interesting.
I don't understand the love of Clinton. I mean, it's just, I think Trump is pretty awful in certain ways, but other things I think he sounds pretty reasonable. But she's just a confirmed really criminal person, and I love WikiLeaks so much. It's like Christmas every single time there's a new release, and now they've got Soros on the line, so I think it's really funny to see, I guess, technology fighting back and the free media fighting back.
It really shifted, and I agree with Josh, the corruption of going back to Ron Paul, and we know what happened to him at the RNC, essentially the delegates stealing, and Lee Camp, I have to say, has done an extraordinary job on putting out information on the fraud and electoral system, the rigged system of Sanders essentially having the votes stolen from him. And I couldn't agree more that that is very likely the case, that and why Trump is likely coming out saying, I'm not going to win this, because he recognizes those voting machines, as you mentioned. Diebold owns, I believe, sold to Dominion. It's based in Denver, Colorado. It is slated, I feel, for Clinton to win, unfortunately. However, I'm thinking beyond this election and about those local congressional races, again, that are far more important. And the youth are the game changer, the 18 to 28-year-olds, I feel, and everyone, but I think they're going to be pivotal and rising through a movement that has the arts and the music and the information, the symposiums, and so on. And as far as technology, diversification is definitely key. I don't think we should, Tatiana, I agree with you, rely solely on technology. I definitely appreciate individuals from Assange and Snowden and even Bradley Manning, Chelsea, unfortunately what he's going through now, but I appreciate what they've done to expose a lot of the truth, for sure. You know, truth is key, but we do need to diversify, meaning getting involved in our local elections, in our community, meeting people face to face, and having technology is one key. But wow, independent media, I think it's definitely their time. And there is a need, I feel, for a platform to pull in all this independent media and have a universal location that everybody can trust to help build everyone. And that's the goal of free and equal elections, not only for this year, but for decades to come.
I think one thing that I agree with especially is this reliance on technology. And I've always wondered why, you know, these electronic voting machines, for me, are basically so the media can have an instant reaction to the elections, can be like, oh, and the elections are over, and an hour later they can have, or, you know, some sort of outcome. But I think, why can't you vote at these elections? You get a printed out receipt of what you voted for, and then you stick that in a ballot, and the electronic ones are for the media to go, oh, and be all whoop-de-doo and make stories, but then the actual votes get counted by hand like they used to, with a whole system based on double-checking or whatever they used to do. Is that something that's being looked at?
Absolutely. I was recently at Freedom Fest. I saw you there. It was like a glance, Tatiana. It's like, oh, there she is in person. And there was an actual group there. It's a center, I believe, for election science. And they had me vote. I voted exactly what you did. I went there, voted. I used a type of voting called approval voting. There's different types. There's instant runoff voting, score voting, and so on. That's another issue. We need to have alternative voting methods. The fact that we just have a singular vote plays into that whole wasted vote syndrome, which is a creation of the two-party system to continue to maintain control of the system. So that was a really neat thing. I went to vote, and I had my little card, and I could go online at home and check to see that my vote was counted. And I thought that was really great to actually experience the process, and I felt so much more as if I was involved and my vote was being counted. So it made my time, it felt worthy, I was engaged, participating. And that's something here at Free and Equal Elections through our Electoral Reform Symposium. We'll be holding our 3rd annual one at Colorado University Boulder, November 18th. We'll have experts discussing issues from gerrymandering to alternative voting methods to the Electoral College and so on. Should we have blockchain online voting or paper ballots? But I don't know the answers, but what I do feel is that we need to bring the experts together, and again, through that conversation, that's what's going to bring about the solutions, and finally, once and for all, ridding of this rigged electoral system.
Have you seen a lot of interest in this event because of all the Bernie supporters? I mean, Bernie supporters got really engaged, but, you know, as a side note, I get really frustrated because, you know, you guys were talking about dependence on youth earlier, and you know, you think of all these Bernie kids, but the problem is that they don't understand basic economics. I mean, the education system isn't particularly good in this country, so they're on this tip where they think more free stuff, and it kind of A, makes everybody not take them seriously, and B, it's actually a dangerous way of thinking because the things that they want to rally against will actually be exaggerated by them participating in that way. You know, by having more free stuff, they're actually driving up the price of college, blah, blah, blah. So
well,
have you guys put any effort into that, or is that too partisan for you?
Actually, that is strategic and why we're holding now our 3rd annual United We Stand Fest. We had one last September. Chuck D of Public Enemy spoke there, of which in support of our efforts. And, well, you know, I don't want to go too much into 2014, but we're currently in private negotiation for what went down there with UCLA. I'll continue to give the benefit of the doubt, but it was a lot of unwarranted damage, towards really stifling free speech. And I'm hoping we can settle that privately. It's looking quite promising. Chuck D did speak on our stage. He resonates with the youth, not only, calling out UCLA for what they did wrongfully, but also I think that it really triggered that, this year we need to hold it definitely at a university and make that happen. So we're holding our 3rd annual United We Stand Fest at Colorado University Boulder, the Mackey Auditorium, and it holds 2,000 people. Artist John Prine just performed there a little while ago. Edward Snowden was there on live feed, and really it's about bringing that cultural change and that cultural shift through the arts and music. So I do think, the fact that that event is co-hosted by one of the most extraordinary student groups I've ever seen, if not the most, called Student Voices Count. You may recall last year they got national recognition for trying to allow students into the debate. The GOP held a debate at CU Boulder last year. Trump was there and so on. And they only allowed 50 students to attend in a venue that holds 10,000 people. And the university at Colorado University Boulder funded all of it, and yet the students couldn't be really at that debate. So I commend them for standing up for what's right, and they're the perfect co-host for what we're doing. I think that having the independent media, the social media, is a game changer in educating the youth like never before. They're not as reliant on the educational system, because you're right, Tatiana, but we're here to spin it in the right direction, upward educational direction through the music and the entertainment and the speakers. We have some big announcements coming up, sort of surreal. And I don't want to jinx myself. I've been very humbled, as I'm sure you. I think anyone else would have canceled that fest in 2014, but I never, never, never give up. And they underestimated me, and I'm stronger because of it. And so, I genuinely want to see, these students be viewed not only throughout the U.S. but the world. I do foresee the whole world seeing these young faces and all faces of thousands staring in, seeing the music, but also becoming informed through our presidential debate, which will focus primarily on the rigged electoral system.
Excellent. Very cool. So you can't make announcements as to who's going to be a part of it yet, because we're still confirming, right?
We are. There is some announcements of talent on our website. Public Enemy 2.0 will be there. Very happy about that. To former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, Earth Guardians, the lead singer there, he recently spoke in front of the United Nations, suing the government. So younger. So we're going to have the a cappella group there at CU Boulder sing the national anthem. Dozens of students or so, dozen. That is just a whole different vibrational level how that's going to be sung. And I hope, groups like maybe Flowbots will be there. They're very interested. They did a song Handlebars. They have a really awesome nonprofit organization called, I believe, Youth on Record. I love what Prophets of Rage are doing. I mean, the fact that Tom Morello and, and Chuck D and all. So that's the kind of energy we're welcoming, whether it's Joan Baez or the Crosby, Still, Nash & Young. Early bird gets the worm, but we do have a big announcement on the rise, and it's very historic and very cool. Carla brought up Nelson Mandela, and I think the historic side of incorporating a Mandela or family into this would be pivotal as well.
I don't know if Mandela is such a good guy, actually. I watched a documentary, and he apparently was participating in all sorts of violent stuff from prison, so I don't know about him being so great, but maybe.
I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I was very surprised because everybody's like, Nelson Mandela, he's so great, and actually he was involved with some pretty violent organizations, so I don't know, sometimes these folk heroes of different communities sometimes don't always have the best background. Like, look at Che Guevara, right? Everybody has their Che hats on, their Che shirts, but Che Guevara was really murderous and was actually horrible to gays and to musicians. So it's always ridiculous when musicians are wearing a Che shirt, because it's like, he would have killed you if you didn't like your music, I guess.
And these are good things to discuss, because you always have to look, well, who did the documentary and what state of mind was Mandela in? Like Bradley Manning is now in a state of mind that is just not well. She is in a very toxic environment. It doesn't justify actions, but it can change a person, and that's not necessarily you know, they shouldn't have been in those environments, I feel, in the first place. So, but, you know, I always give the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. And, you know, what's great is that there's just, we're going to pay a tribute to the late Amelia Boynton Robinson of Selma on our stage as well, who was slated to be our keynote speaker last September. She passed away 2 months prior at, I think, 110 years of age and wasn't able to make it. But she is truly the real deal. Of Selma, brought Martin Luther King into Selma, went to Montgomery, Bloody Sunday. She was tear gassed, left for dead on the bridge. She registered people to vote with her mom in a buggy wagon in the 1920s. She was the first African-American woman to run for Congress in Alabama in the 60s, garnering 10% of the vote. And I got to meet her last April. So there's a lot of civil rights leaders around our network and circle that are helping in every way, and I'm so grateful. And of course, with what you're doing in your independent media, you and Josh, I mean, we all make a difference. It's time to come together to break through the rigged system and shift things in a positive, peaceful direction.
Well, you know, I'm not going to do a shameless plug, but I'm going to bring it up, not actually to plug myself, but because it's relevant. You know, I think that artists need different kinds of solutions too, because art is very hard to put out there if you don't have any money. And so what we're doing is an artist coin. So any artist, they can build their own brand, and basically their audience becomes their supporters. And one of the things that I found frustrating in today's day and age is that there isn't that much, you know, protest music going on. And I think that that's a lot of that is, you know, you got to follow the money. So I think that over the next few years there should be a lot more ways for artists to be engaging. We're doing an Art for Ross project right now where people are making art for Ross Ulbricht and they're sending it to them, and it's like an online campaign. So I love getting art and activism mixed together. So I think that's going to be really successful. When is the event one more time?
It's at Colorado University Boulder, October 25th.
Oh, okay.
October 25th, and it's the right timing because at that point, as you can see, Trump is not committing to be a part of the Commission on Presidential Debates, which I think is quite smart.
Wait, I don't know about that. Can you tell me about that? What's the story?
Sure.
I don't pay much attention
No,
sometimes.
I mean, the Commission on Presidential Debates is very corrupt. It's run by the former chairs of the Democratic and Republican Party. And the League of Women Voters of the U.S., rightfully so, retracted their support in 1988 from the Commission on Presidential Debates, CPD, stating it's perpetuated a fraud on the American voters. So Trump did try to put on a presidential debate back in 2012. Not many people know that. It was canceled. Very cool that he tried to do that. Also very cool that he's running outside of the two-party system. Don't agree with all of his viewpoints, but I like that he's shaking things up like Sanders did as well. However, he has not confirmed currently to be a part of the Commission on Presidential Debates, which I think is smart. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw them. Sponsors have removed themselves from the CPD since the last election, and I do think that if he did say that he was going to participate, they would open up the podium to a third person like Governor Gary Johnson, who deserves to be in that debate, but so does Dr. Jill Stein. I think they would only open it up to Gary Johnson to try to take support away from Trump, because that's what the CPD is all about, building the two-party system. And Trump is not a part of that. Clinton is. So I hope that he does be a part. He is a part of our debate this October 25th, and I welcome the other candidates too, Johnson and so on, Clinton, Stein, and possibly the Constitution Party candidate, Darrell Castle. I think they're about to get on the ballot in enough states to be viably electable. Fingers crossed. So super cool and stoked, but we are all about addressing the corruption of the rigged system, and I think since Trump's campaign has reached out to us asking for the invitation, maybe he'll participate. I would love to have him there.
You know, my dad's family, well, my family, I guess, right? So I have a lot of major problems with Trump. I usually rag more on Clinton.
Understandable.
But, I mean, she's just blatantly horrifying. But with Trump, I will say this. My dad's family, they have a contracting business, and they've been getting work and continuing to work with the Trump family for over 40 years. And, you know, if you're a contractor, you don't have to keep working for somebody. These people are pretty wealthy. They don't need to, you know, only work for the Trump family. They have other opportunities, and they like him. They think that he's very straight up. So, you know, the way that the media has been portraying it, it's really hard to understand exactly who everybody is. He also changes his mind every 5 minutes, and the stuff that he said about torture is very disturbing. He has some kind of scary ideas, but some of the other stuff that he says is pretty reasonable. I mean, he's like a little bit of a roll of the dice kind of guy. Like, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but we know that the recipe that we're going to get when we submit to Clinton, which hopefully people won't. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know I mean, it's really getting intense out there. But
Can
we're
I just
coming.
quickly,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
I just wanted to add something. Being Bitcoin guy, blockchain guy, I heard a great interview with Ralph Merkel. He's a renowned cryptographer on Epicenter Bitcoin. And he was talking about different ways we can, instead of voting, we can have different ways of democratic choosing some sort of leader. And so he was talking about prediction markets, where prediction markets have shown to be extremely accurate and what prediction market basically is where you have, it's basically you make a bet on two things. So the most common one would be you bet on either Clinton or Trump. And because people are putting money on the line, they tend to take their ego out of it and tend to vote for who they think will win. So he was saying, okay, that obviously doesn't work, but imagine if you said, who will make you happier after 2 years of being, or 4 years of being in office? Trump or Clinton? Or who will make the masses more happier? And so people would then vote by betting on an outcome, and because they make money if the outcome is wrong or right, depending on how they voted, and tying that into these decentralized autonomous organizations, which are based on blockchain tech and all this stuff, is really cool. It's called Futurky, the form of governance. And I really love some of these outside the square thinking, outside of the box thinking of how we can run society instead of the typical let's all vote and have media that try to tell you what. I mean, we've got the elections right now here in Berlin or coming up, and all we see is posters with pictures of faces on them and a party name. How am I meant to know, I vote for that person because they're really pretty or whatever? It's just such a strange system that we live in. And I think there are better ways of doing this. There are better ways of choosing our destiny than voting for a face. And have you looked into any of these sort of alternative ways of running society instead of trying to fix what we have, really thinking outside the box?
I think that you're really onto something. I think that that concept alone, the prediction markets, is something to incorporate on a panel, potentially with those who are talking about paper ballots and blockchain online voting, and have a lot of diversity. Primarily, the objective of our symposiums is to educate not only the people, but the people who are going to be running for local office and Congress. I foresee many independents rising. And we will be launching on our phone called the Election Assistant, where you'll be able to scroll up and down and see every single candidate. You can be like, oh, there's Carla right there in New Hampshire running for senator. You know, oh, what does she support our 10-point platform of no war? You know, no NDAA, no Patriot Act, you know, the things that most people can agree on across the spectrum, oh, she's on an online debate with the people running in her elections, to an online, who's donating to her campaign? Oh, is that a big corporation? Maybe I won't, probably not donating to Carla, but maybe another candidate, to like a company like Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps or Natural Grocers. I don't really have an objection to money being in campaigns, I guess. I'm kind of indifferent at this point. I just think that we need to become informed about what sort of money is going towards each candidate. And as people see and become more aware of what's going towards each candidate, they'll be more conscious of whether or not that candidate would vote for them. So I think the power is in our hands and our phone right now, but also it's just so time to get involved in our local elections. I've made a choice to get very involved in my local elections in Cambria. It was sort of hard because I knew that it may ruffle feathers, or even I've noticed some friends of mine that have great hearts, they don't attend the local meetings, and they can be easily swayed, you know, by individuals in the community that do have self-interest. And so until and when those friends and people, you know, get involved, and we have now 7 people running for the local election here for the water board in Cambria, California, which is where free and equal elections is headquartered. I felt it was a duty in my heart and soul to get involved in the elections and to bring about accountability here. And I foresee lots of individuals like myself taking the lead in doing that throughout the United States and eventually the world as well.
Good stuff, guys. I like it. We're making some progress here, folks. Okay, so Christina, one last time, where can people find you?
You can go to freeandequal.org. That's free, A-N-D, equal.org. All elections shall be free and equal. It's from the Articles of the Constitution statewide, and came from Illinois when I did ballot access out there for 10 years. An attorney opened up the Illinois State Constitution and opened up free and equal, and I said, could I use that name for free and equal elections? And he's like, sure, it's a perfect name. And so that's what it is, freeandequal.org, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so all donations are tax deductible.
Excellent. Everybody split up your donations between Carla and Christina. Excellent show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, if you're in Colorado or if you feel like going and exploring the countryside, you can go and also stop by and learn about the different options that we have in our country. So thank you very much. Some final I don't know, words for our audience. First of all, shout out to Megan Duffield out in Colorado right now listening. One of my favorite girls. I've got some upcoming shows. There's Liberty Fest in New York on September 10th. September 17th, Jordan Page and I are going to be in North Carolina, so you can find out about this on TatianaRose.com. There's the Tom Woods, Bob Murphy, Contra Krugman Cruise going out of Galveston, Texas in October. There's La BitConf, the Latin American Bitcoin Conference in Buenos Aires, November 4th to 5th, and there's just so many wonderful things happening out there.
Magic word.
Oh, my magic word. Oh, my magic phrase, because I like to kind of give a little something.
Yeah.
Freedom is for everyone. So thank you to all our wonderful listeners. Josh, do you have any final words for anybody?
No, just
No.
live free, and peaceful parenting, and love.
I like that.
And
Also,
Bitcoin and gold.
and also, if anybody wants some marketing, PR, advertising help, call me up at Crypto Media Hub. We are really nice and fun people, and we know all the street smart stuff. So anyway, I'll see you all next week. Actually, I don't know if we have any more shows planned for this month, but check in. Thanks, everyone. Peace out. Have a good day.